Okay, so now we are in the final chapter, the conclusion. And in a way, I think the conclusion is not that difficult to write, really, because if you manage to write everything, if everything else is clear, I think the conclusion comes quite easily. It's not that difficult. You don't need to spend a lot of time on analyzing data or anything. So also the conclusion is very structured because if you take a look at the rubric from the thesis, uh, it asks for many things. If you take a look, there are many points for the conclusion. It's not like an overall point for conclusion in the rubric. There are many things that you need to tick. So that's why I have all of these points in here. And the very first thing that you need to add is like a quick summary, like a wrap up of your thesis. I think if we also can see that in the good example in the conclusion. Try to wrap up what you did, super quickly, what is the research problem or the research question and how you answer to that through your theoretical contributions. Can be, I mean, they wrote a little bit more, but it can be as small as 1 or 2 paragraphs. You don't need a lot, just a wrap up. Then we have two things that are kind of connected, limitations and future research. We discussed many times that we have several limitations. For example, we only did one survey. We didn't do like a follow-up survey. So we only have information about one point in time. We don't know really what happens. That is a methodological limitation that you can disclose in here. Another limitation is that we only interview 2 people because we didn't have enough time. So 2 people is not enough, definitely. So it's an important limitation. So write about that in here. You don't need to write a lot. Maybe 2 limitations is good for your research. There are many limitations, but think about maybe 2 and explain why, although they are limitations, it's not like you are doing something wrong. It's not something, yeah, like not rigorous, or it doesn't reduce trustworthiness from your research. It's just a limitation that we need to take into consideration when building the conclusions, but it's not like you are misinterpreting data or faking data, because that's not what you should do. And usually connected to those limitations, you propose ideas for future research. So again, we didn't have enough time to interview people. A clear idea for future research is to do a more throughout deeper case study with a lot of interviews, maybe a lot of visits to the university, collecting a lot of secondary data. So this suggests how could you kind of tackle the limitations that you had. And then other 2 things that I think are not that hard to write, the practical implications. So what could students learn from this? What could teachers learn from this? I mean, like different stakeholders, if you think about it, what can they learn from your study in a very practical way? Not the theoretical puzzle that we did in chapter 5. This is the theoretical contribution, a more kind of concrete, practical kind of takeaway point. Maybe you can discuss 2 things, like one for students, one for the teachers. It can also be policymakers. I don't know, maybe like business, university managers or something like that, based on the topic that we are doing. And connected to that, also more like a higher level implication, not only practical, but societal implications. How can society benefit from what you have done? I think we are touching a sensitive topic with happiness, with global mindset, with sustainable consumer behavior. I think it's easy to write. So maybe write like 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph on societal implications, the same for practical implications. You don't need a lot. There are so many things you can write, but you don't have to write a lot. I think in general, your conclusion should be at least 1 paragraph each, but you can have maybe 2 paragraphs in some sections if you want to talk a little bit more. So as you have already realized, and based also on the length of the video, the conclusion is not really that hard, as long as everything else is clear. If everything else is not clear, it's going to be a mess. It probably it's impossible to write the conclusion if you don't really know what you found. Maybe this will be impossible to write, although it's very simple. But if you know what you have found, what you have learned, this is super easy to write. So that's why I suggest leave this until the very end. And if you understand what you are doing, this should come easily. So that's the end. And we can take a look at the previous example. I think they wrote a very good conclusion. It's quite long. They touch many things. They are not missing anything important. I think it's a good conclusion. Of course, there are many limitations, and they discussed a few. So that's it. I think that's the end of this assignment, and it's also kind of a guideline for your thesis. It's the same thing, just with more data, more time, deeper analysis, more stakeholders involved. But that's basically our research journey, what we have done. So that's it for this assignment.